Whoa, anybody else have problems with seasonal allergies during this time of year? Man, eyes are itching, nose is running, tickle in the old throat. Yeah, it's been always tough this year in the spring with allergies. And anyway, we'll make it through. Nothing that some like Claritin and Kleenex can't solve, right? Right. Let's make it through today's Bellringer. No, you're not allergic to the Bellringer. Don't give me that.
All right.
Hey now.
Mr. Kovacs class. It's Mr. Kovacs class. You might learn on time. It's Mr. Kovacs class.
He's interested too.
It's Mr. Kovacs class. And he's super cool. It's Mr. Kovacs class.
Hey, I'm back. By now, you should know the 3 different types of symbiotic relationships. Remember, symbiosis are these really close relationships where one organism uses the other's body as its habitat. You're either ecto or endosymbiotic, depending on whether or not you live on top of or inside of the other organism. Right? But there are 3 types of symbiotic relationships. The first one that we learned about is called mutualism. In mutualism, one of them is happy, the other one is happy. Everybody's happy in that relationship. Both organisms benefit in mutualism. I gave you the example of the acacia tree and the acacia thorn ant. Your job right now is to do a little Google search and then tell me, give me an example of mutualism. Well, that's interesting, an interesting one. Yeah, there are lots of examples of mutualism. They're fairly common, not the most common, but fairly common. The second symbiotic relationship that we studied was where one was happy and the other one was like meh. Right, in my example on the Dr. Phil show, we had the pseudoscorpion. Happy as could be to ride on the back of that beetle, but the beetle just didn't care. The beetle was like, this doesn't bother me at all. Do the same thing. I want you to go do a quick Google search, find another example of 2 organisms that have a commensalistic relationship, an example of commensalism. Interesting, really interesting stuff. I think the most interesting one, though, of course, is the third type of symbiotic relationship. That's when one benefits and the other one is harmed. We call the one that benefits the good. We call it the parasite. And the one that's harmed is called the good. We call them the host. And their relationship is called parasitism. And I gave lots of examples of parasitism. I gave the example of the tongue-eating sea louse in the red snapper. And I gave examples of tapeworms and guinea worms. And again, I want you to find an example of parasitism that we haven't talked about yet and write it in here. Ew, I can't believe that's gross. Yeah, parasites can be gross. Very gross. All right, good. So these are types of symbiotic relationships. They affect populations of organisms. So that's why they're grouped into the study of ecology. Now, of course, we wouldn't be doing ecology justice if we didn't talk about some of the abiotic factors. What does abiotic mean again? That's right. Abiotic means not living, never were living. And abiotic factors tend to cycle through ecosystems, right? Cycle through. And there's 4 cycles you need to know. The first one, I'm hoping you already know because it's kind of elementary school. We call it the water cycle. The water cycle, right? Water is an inorganic, abiotic factor in the environment. It usually falls to the ground as precipitation, right? It'll run off and collect into pools, ponds, streams, rivers, the ocean. Then leave that, become a gas in the form of evaporation, and it's now a gaseous form. Then it gets colder and it condenses into clouds, condensation, and then falls again as precipitation. Another word that might be new this year that we'll learn is transpiration, which is when water passes through the leaves of trees. The water cycle is one of the 4 cycles. The other cycles are the carbon cycle, which is the cycling of carbon through the environment. Carbon can be trapped in the bodies of organisms. Carbon can be released as carbon dioxide gas. We're going to learn about the carbon cycle. Abiotic cycle is nitrogen, the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is a component, of protein, so it's stored in bodies of animals as proteins, but it gets released back into the environment, and it can move throughout the environment in various ways. One thing you may not remember is that nitrogen makes up most of our atmosphere, nitrogen gas. But what's weird about nitrogen gas in the atmosphere is we really can't do anything with it, right? So to cycle nitrogen through the ecosystem, we have to do some interesting things with it. We'll learn about nitrogen cycle. Then finally, we've got the phosphorus cycle, which is another cycle of abiotic factors. Phosphorus, which is a essential soil component and a key part of phospholipids, right? The lipid part of membranes. It's got phosphorus in it. So phosphorus needs to cycle through the ecosystem. All right, so 4 abiotic cycles that you need to know. You need to know water cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle. Here, let's try that again. You're going to need to know water cycle, nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, phosphorus cycle. You tell me, what are the 4 you need to know? You need to know. That's right. Water, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus. Those are the 4 cycles you need to know in order to be ready for the Regents exam, which is now less than 5 weeks away. All right, let's do it.